Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Idahoan Show. A while back, I was presented with an interesting hypothetical scenario. Imagine, if you will, that you are some kind of medieval warlord or feudal noble, and you've just expended considerable resources training and equipping a company of archers to ensure the security of your realm and establish your military prominence. And then the invention of black powder renders archery obsolete. Obviously, you're going to have to re-equip your fighting force in order to stay at the cutting edge of military technology, but you're loath to throw away all of the time and resources that you spent training these archers. So, as you develop an indigenous musket design to equip your forces with, is it possible to develop a muzzleloader that has essentially the handling characteristics of a bow and arrow, so that you can capitalize on your troops' existing training? I think it's possible, and so in response to this hypothetical scenario, I decided to try and build one.
To begin with, I drove a rifling button through a piece of 7/8 outer diameter by 1/2 inch inner diameter DOM tubing. To be honest, a smooth bore would probably have been adequate for this project, but it's actually not that hard to rifle a barrel, so I went ahead and rifled it. Next, I notched one end of the barrel and welded in a breech plug. Again, notching the barrel may not be strictly necessary, but it provides more length of weld and thereby ensures a more secure closure of the breech. I machined a 60-degree muzzle crown to facilitate ease of loading. Next, I machined a pair of guide rods and a sliding mass that would act as a hammer for the gun. I TIG welded the sliding assembly together and welded the guide base to the breech end of the barrel. Next, I machined a simple ring clamp that would allow me to affix a movable vertical foregrip to the barrel of the rifle. Then I carved a wooden grip to go with it. Finally, I threaded a percussion cap nipple into the breech plug, installed the hammer assembly with its twin springs and pinned them in place, and attached the foregrip to the barrel.
So here's the prototype that I came up with. Conceptually, it's very simple, just a rifle barrel with a welded-in breech plug and a percussion cap nipple to provide ignition, then a vertical foregrip, which is adjustable so that I could move it forward or backwards depending on my length of pull. And then, I don't know if I can really call this a hammer, but I have a spring-loaded mass back here that I can pull back, and then when I release it, it should slam forward, set off the percussion cap, and fire the shot. Now, I should probably add a disclaimer that I am by no means an expertly trained archer, but let's go ahead and take a few shots with this thing anyways. Now, of course, in order to load this, as with any muzzleloader, we'll need a ramrod. Many muzzleloaders provide storage for a ramrod on the gun itself, In this case, given our hypothetical scenario, I had envisioned that when these were issued out to ex-archers, they would be accompanied by a leather scabbard, reminiscent of an archer's quiver, which would house both the gun, the ramrod, and provide space for ammunition components. As it is, I did not actually build such a leather scabbard. But, anyhow, to begin loading, I'm going to charge the gun with powder. Let's put in, I don't know, maybe 60 to 70 grains of Pyrodex here. And next, I need to seat a patched round ball as our projectile. And finally, we'll just place a percussion cap on the nipple, and then we'll be ready to fire. Of course, this doesn't have any kind of a half cock, doesn't have a cock setting at all, and so it also doesn't have really any kind of safety, but I think if I hold my hand under the protrusions, under the spring-loaded portion of this hammer mass, whatever you want to call it, that should provide adequate constraint to ensure that the hammer doesn't drop unexpectedly on the percussion cap while I'm trying to get it on. Okay, point that in a safe direction and gently lower it down, and I think we're ready to shoot. Well, it works. Well, it definitely works, and it's plenty powerful. As you'd expect. I mean, ballistically, it's not all that different from any other 50 caliber muzzleloader. Now, there's definitely a technique to shooting this. For one thing, I found that, well, let's just call this the hammer. It's really easy to ride the hammer forward. And when you do that, of course, it doesn't have enough energy to set off the cap. And so, it took me a few tries, a little bit of practice to get to where I was releasing the hammer nice and cleanly so that it would snap forward with enough force to set off that cap. Now, the other dimension to technique here is accuracy. And that's where I'm afraid I would need a lot of additional practice to get to where I could hit anything consistently with this, even at realistic distance for archery, let alone at realistic distances for, muzzle loaders on the battlefield. So, would this have been practical in our hypothetical scenario? Well, I don't know. I think to answer that question, you'd really need to, make a couple of these and issue them out to your archers, let them get the hang of shooting them. It's possible that an expert archer could pick this up and figure out pretty intuitively how to aim it and hit stuff with it. Then again, maybe not. I don't know. I think to answer that question, we'd really need to bring in a couple of those hypothetical archers that we can't really access because they are hypothetical. Now, would this be practical for anything in the real world? No. I really can't think of any practical application for this, today in real life. It was just a project that I took on based on a hypothetical scenario, then I did it for fun. And it was a fun project. I guess that's really its only practical application, is that it was fun. And I think probably the reason it's fun is because it's different. It seems like if you look at the shooting industry or the firearms industry these days, there's a real dearth of new ideas. Very few companies are really willing to try anything new. They'd rather just sit around and polish cannonballs. But and I think that's what makes stuff like this, or like the matchlock that I built as a collaborative project with Jorg Sprave, so fun and interesting, is just because they're different, even if they are horrendously impractical. But anyway, until next time, thank you for watching the Idahoan Show.